Hey, you're watching BET's What's at Stake. I'm Marc Lamont Hill. This week we're in Harlem at Red Rooster and we're talking about domestic violence.
Hi, I'm Bianca Charday. I'm a professional model, journalist, and motivational speaker, and I'm also a domestic abuse survivor.
Nicole Daly. I work with the Boston Public Health Commission, and I am program director for a teen dating violence prevention initiative.
Hi, I'm Brian Hargrove, professional chef and a domestic violence survivor.
Albert Abreu, domestic violence advocate and intervention specialist.
Domestic violence is always a serious issue in America, but lately there's been a lot of talk about it. How serious an issue is it?
When you're talking about 1 in 3 young women will experience domestic violence or some form of abuse in her lifetime, and 1 in 4 boys have experienced abuse, that's an extremely high number.
20% of young people are involved in an abusive relationship. A lot of times, many of those young people are identifying the abuse because they are physically abused. But once you start pulling in all the other factors like financial abuse, sexual abuse, that number can be a lot higher.
And I think we have to look at what the definition of domestic violence is first. It's a pattern of behaviors in an intimate relationship where one tries to gain or maintain power and control over the other using these tactics, right? So then we're talking about verbal abuse, we're talking about emotional, psychological, and now in the day and age where we live in, we have a lot of technology, so now we got digital abuse.
Digital abuse?
Yeah.
What's that?
Technological abuse, cyberbullying, also posting things online, unwanted, naked photos.
The numbers are pretty stark on this. Why don't we hear more about this in our community?
From a male's point of view, I think that men are, very shy. You'll be at the barbershop, the pool hall, the basketball game, anywhere, and guys will make fun of it. Oh, man, it's all right, don't worry about it, man. She's only a female, you're a guy. No, you should look at it, look at the situation and see what's best and get out of it, of course. Because if you don't, it can escalate to something worse.
So a lot of times when you hear people making up and breaking up, that could be code that it's an abusive relationship.
We think it's cute.
Yeah, or my girlfriend is crazy. There's a lot of code words that get used, but people don't necessarily readily identify. That means there's abuse happening. And you might only be hit a couple times, but the insults, the put-downs, the cyber manipulation, that stuff is ongoing in between the physical incidences.
What happened to you?
Mine was physical, and literally he was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Outside of the abuse part, like it was never emotional abuse, never the put downs. Now the manipulation, that was huge. Like they know the best for you, like they kind of take you away from your family. If it's not me, it's just not good for you.
Did your family and friends know what was happening?
No, I've always, once again, I'm very private, so I didn't say anything.
Were you afraid to leave?
No. I think that's because I believe in God, but I think in not showing weakness, that intimidates them more.
Let us know what's at stake for you. Go to BET.com/what's at stake and tweet us at what's at stake.
Oftentimes, the story of domestic violence is the story of men doing things to women, and that is a dominant thing. However, men can also be in abusive relationships. You were in one. What happened?
I was a young guy, it was just my high school sweetheart. My first love. And then when things started going a little downhill, you're around 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're saying that there's a bottle sitting next to her and it's like almost empty. And you're like, what's the problem here? Once she realized that I realized that she had a problem, then yeah, she started getting physical.
When you do get in a relationship, I do think it is very, very important that you know a lot about that person's background. And I think oftentimes we are attracted to the familiar, whether it's self-esteem or growing up without a father. Maybe you were abused of some sort. If those issues have not been addressed, or if they haven't even realized that I do have this problem, because you do have to realize it yourself. I have this problem. It's going to be a constant cycle of destruction. This is a relationship for me because this is what I'm accustomed to.
How long do these things last? Because people say, if that was me, as soon as it happens, I'm leaving. But what we find is that people stay in these relationships for a long time.
For victims, the most dangerous time is when they try to leave their partner or when they do try to regain some of that control by moving away from the relationships.
Especially when you have kids involved. It's harder to leave.
That's a piece of it that often doesn't get talked about, too, is that when kids are watching this, they're also part of the abuse.
And that's the part that I didn't like. Because when my daughter came to me and she said, Daddy, I thought women didn't hit men, that woke me up right there.
And that's trauma for them. Oftentimes, what we see at home models our relationships. And if that's how we see conflict being resolved, then when we grow up, that's all we know.
Sometimes they end up being the ones growing up to be abused or even being the abuser, because once again, they identify with the familiar.
I saw my daughter change.
Really?
I saw her become, angry. And I just sit back and analyze that okay, I need to do something about the situation.
So you eventually left the relationship?
I actually left the state.
Abusers are smarter than you think. They know your weaknesses, they know your background, so they know when to take the rug from up under your feet. It's a void that needs to be filled, so they know when to give it back to you, and that's what keeps that cycle continuously going.
And I feel like a lot of times victims try to help and they try to help until they reach that point where they realize that they can't, but sometimes that's months, sometimes that's years before they're able to learn that message that they've been sent.
Let us know what's at stake for you. Go to BET.com/what's at stake and tweet us at what's at stake.
Let's look at pop culture for a minute. On the one hand, you have the Ray Rice thing, and then you have the Chris Brown thing. And in both cases, there are people who were like, he didn't mean it, let it go, he's sorry, he apologized, it's over. And other people who are like, I can never forgive this.
I think there's 3 sides to every story. His side, her side, and the truth. We will never know the truth of all 3 sides.
But do we need to? Like, do we need to know what happened with Ray Rice to know that what he did was unacceptable?
I don't care how mad you are. If you feel the need that you have to put your hands on that person and get that angry, that's not a healthy situation for you to be in anyway, because you should never get that angry where it becomes physical.
If you don't condone violence, then everyone would know that the response is not violence. Whether I'm mad at you or not, I know I can't respond to you in a violent manner because I will be held accountable for that violence. Someone else out there is watching me.
Big picture, what can we as a society do to help end domestic violence?
Talk about it, not just to the girls, but to the boys. You know, walk away. Trust me, it's easy to walk away.
And there are resources around to help, especially for teens, because what's the additional challenge for a young person is they can't necessarily pick up and move their whole family. Try to find that program in your neighborhood, that DV advocate, to help you come up with a safety plan, because it's also dependent on the abuser too. Some abusers will let you leave, but then other abusers will hold on. Yeah, will come find you.
And that's the hardest part, I think, is sometimes we all have to remind ourselves that we're a community and we're a society and we have to be there for each other. As my homeboy always says, we're all entitled to good love. We're all entitled to second chances. We're all entitled to healthy choices. I want to thank y'all for joining me today. And for anyone out there who's watching this, who's dealing with domestic abuse, please seek help. Go to BET.com, what's at stake. We'll have links provided for all sorts of domestic violence outlets.
Let us know what's at stake for you. Go to BET.com/what's at stake and tweet us at what's at stake.